Welcome to this new episode of Tech Captain. So today, Gareth and I are joined by Jeroen Van Hautte, co-founder and CPO, CTO, but you'll tell us more in a minute, of Tech Wolf. So that's a company you funded that is leader in skills-based talent technologies. And Jeroen is a Cambridge-educated innovator. He plays a crucial role in advancing the AI technology that provides enterprises with insights into workforce skills. In addition to his work at Tech Wolf, Jeroen advises early-stage tech founders at Antler, focusing on developing robust and engineering cultures and strategic priorities. But today we'll talk about your entrepreneurial journey, but we'll start by diving into Tech Wolf's API first technology, transforming HR. There's a lot of people making a lot of promises on that, and it often sounds even a bit boring or clunky, and how you overcame those challenges. So do you want to tell us more about how you're building the future of workplace technology?
Yeah, so we started Tech Wolf when we were still students. So what we saw in computer science at Ghent University was, in essence, a lot of the students around us, they were working in hospitality to make some money on the side. But for a lot of those, it wasn't necessarily the thing that they liked most, or it wasn't necessarily the thing that used their skill sets best. It was just the easiest work for them to find. And we decided that we wanted to build technology to help them find exactly that work that best matches their skill set. So initially the focus was on students, but we quite quickly also discovered that, well, basically we were solving a small part of a much bigger problem. So we started looking at the staffing market. And then in talking to enterprises, what they told us was like, you've got this really cool technology that can help figure out what skills people have and match them to the open vacancies we have. But the problem is that we only have like 5 candidates for the jobs that we really care about anyways. So I can read those resumes just fine. But I do have like 5,000 people here that I think might have a couple that would be a great fit for this job, but I just can't find them inside the company. And they asked us, like, can you use this technology inside the company as well? And that's where the ball really got rolling on what we do today.
I see, but my question, and I think a lot of people listening will have the same question, is like, how does it go further than just CV or LinkedIn parser looking for keywords?
Yeah, so we basically combine quite a broad range of data sources. So on one hand, there's the HR data sources. So those things are typically more associated with resume, etc. So you have the working history, you have the feedback, the development goals, the training people take. But we also look at business data. So for example, for a software engineer, we'll use JIRA and Confluence to infer what have you worked on? What skills have you leveraged? What documentation have you written? What knowledge is tied to that? But for a customer like GSK, for example, we use their publication tracker to link back the highly specialized skills their scientists use in their research as well.
I saw the JIRA integration because you mentioned it on a blog that I read. And I was wondering then, does JIRA need any special configuration, or do you literally just link to it and you just start sucking data out of it?
So, I mean, we can just connect to it to get data out of it. But we also, for example, have like a tool we use internally where we feed back the skill data into JIRA. So you can see, well, as you're working on tickets, like you can see what skills are required for work, also how your own skills compare. So you can make an informed decision. It also suggests who to pair up with, for example, to like fully cover the work there.
Okay. So it can really help you just make sure that you're assembling the most effective team in that sprint of individuals, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay.
So, I mean, I suppose that to do that, you have to connect to a lot of different APIs, different systems that all enterprises use. But I'm also interested into the AI part. That's the hot topic of the moment. And what kind of AI is it? And do you leverage any existing technologies, either like models or AWS Bedrock from AWS, or like some people being just a ChatGPT API HTTP call, or what do you do? Do you build your own models? What's the story here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've been working on our AI for quite some time now, so it
Yeah.
goes a lot deeper than that, than being a ChatGPT rapper. So, like the way I like to look at our technology is that we really are more of a narrow type of AI. Like we're super focused on solving the skill data problem. So you won't see us coming out with a chatbot anytime soon, because what we really want to do is provide the best possible solution for figuring out what skills people have without introducing the risks that a lot of these sort of very broad AI applications often bring. So we have a more modular architecture. I think we have about 15 different models that we run in production as of today.
Oh, wow.
And that ranges from like more traditional embedding models and statistical models to like smaller generative models. So like more GPT-2 style that we apply to basically extract the right information from data. We have a couple of use cases where we also use LLMs through AWS Bedrock. But basically those tend to be more like on the cosmetic side of things, like combining information we have into like a smooth language format. That's something that we use Bedrock for quite typically.
And if I remember correctly, what you said a few minutes ago, like your background is in computer science.
I mean, like my master's at Cambridge was specifically in natural language processing, and I've also like got a couple of published papers in that field. So I would say like it's my native field. But of course, over time you sort of keep upskilling, of course.
It's interesting too that we were just talking about your sort of use of 15 models and the tech that you actually have. I mean, you're defining yourself as a very AI API centric platform, from what I read on your website. And so you're now in your 6th year. Are there any sort of specific learnings that you made around the tech choices you made early on that perhaps you would do differently now?
Not necessarily like in terms of doing things differently, but I think we didn't appreciate the importance of like being a backend infrastructure product. Even though we made the right decision there initially, I think that appreciation really grew over time. Because what we see now is that our most important partnerships are really with a lot of the systems that have these employee-facing user interfaces. Like the companies like Workday, Cornerstone, etc. And if we would have built into that layer ourselves, I think we would have been competitors to them rather than sort of complementary partners. So something that initially was a design decision that we fully believed in, I think became even more important over time.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that people don't appreciate too, it sounds like this was your company that you founded straight out of university. I think when some people come into the SaaS space who've maybe been building more sort of public facing applications, they don't realize how then important it becomes to make sure that this thing's always available, that you're dealing with SLAs, big enterprises. And how did you sort of find that? Did you sort of were you sort of finding your way initially around how you sort of built that capability, or was that thing relatively straightforward?
Like in the very early days, that was a bit tricky at times. I distinctly remember that I was driving to see a prospect together with one of my co-founders. We were on the highway and we get a call saying, "Hey guys, the demo's down," and obviously like we were on our way to give that demo, so we pulled over on like the side of the road, got our laptops from the trunk, and then like while my co-founder was driving, I was like sort of in the terminal trying to get this thing live again. Which was a bit of a traumatizing experience. Like everything was live in time, but over time, the most important thing we did was bring in people that really were much better at this than us. And I think like one of our early hires especially just has a fantastic mind on building infrastructure to last and to scale. And it's been something that has a huge impact in the years since.
Yeah. I mean, resilience is hard. And obviously the bigger the company, the bigger the audience, oftentimes the tighter the SLAs and the requirements become around how you provide those services out to these companies, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You just spoke about like you on the highway going to that lead to do a demo, and your co-founders, they're also computer scientists. So it leads to my question: how do computer science persons, the highly technical person, go sell a highly technical product to very large corporations? How do you get introduced, and how do you present the value from a non-technical? Because it's very easy for you to get excited about all the models and the complexity of all the systems you build, but they don't really care, right?
Like I would say, one of the things there is that I'm blessed with two fantastic co-founders that are not just computer scientists, but also like really well driven and commercially skilled people as well. But I would say they started out as just driven and then became a lot more commercially skilled through the process, because one of the most important things that we learned is that if you want to figure out whether you're building something valuable and building the right thing, that you need to go out and sell it. And that's what my co-founders did.
Yeah.
Like I was a lot more focused on the tech. Of course, I helped sometimes as well with trying to get the product out in the market. but they really never gave up. And like many late nights and weekends and everything were spent like crafting the perfect email or like iterating on something that they were trying, going places to meet people. And I think when like you push that hard, obviously there's no guarantee that it's going to work out, but some things will move, and then you'll learn from how these things move, and you sort of iterate until you find that way that resonates with the market.
And I know you said that you base in Ghent, and I know in Ghent there's quite a vibrant tech ecosystem, and it's a mid-sized town in Belgium, which is already a small country in Europe. And like for example, we had the CTO of Deliverect into this show a few months ago, which is quite a big company operating internationally. How would you explain that ecosystem in Ghent? Is it all due to the university, or there's more to it?
I think the university plays a pretty big role, and then sort of every success that comes, I think, reinforces the loop again, because the talent that we have in the Ghent ecosystem today has a lot more experience with startups and scaling than a number of years ago. And I feel like there's this sort of culture of giving back and like also really wanting to contribute to that ecosystem. So like the steps sort of up to Series B, they've gotten a lot easier thanks to like the companies that have been there before. And what we also really found in the past is that like just reaching out to some of the founders of the biggest success stories in Belgium, like you drop them an email or like a text, and they're so happy to help.
That's very nice, actually. And what technologies you use to build all of that?
Pretty AWS focused company in terms of cloud. Like at the start, of course, everyone throws credits at you, and you sort of try a little bit of everything. But we found that for the way that we like to work, AWS just was the most convenient. And then over time, like I mean, obviously we got more invested in that ecosystem. In terms of our product itself, so like a lot of it is just API based. So we use a lot of Python. We use Django to structure our APIs. A little bit of Flask and Falcon behind the scenes if we want to go a bit faster there as well. And then the AI side of things is in PyTorch.
And I'm knowing more towards your entrepreneurial journey. Like, what advice you would give to anybody, like actually in university, because that's what you did, right? Like straight out of university to start something. What signs should they look for if it's worth starting it?
Yeah, so I mean, we actually started before we graduated, like a year before our graduation. So I think that was a fantastic way to dive into it, because no one's expecting you to start making a living just yet. So it gives a little bit of space. But like when you start without knowing anything about like about building a company, anything about selling, etc. I think it's really important that you're up to to really go for it, because it's really hard work. You also have to learn super quickly, and I think the difference between that being a fun journey and a horrible one is really the people that you do it with. So making sure that you have great co-founders where like you feel like you have the right connection with them, but also that you're complementary enough. That is super, super important.
I have a question about I mean, again, your company is very interesting to me because it sounds like, AI was the foundation of what you were doing, right? Your background and what you initially built as proof of concepts. And so, Ron and I were just joking before we started this interview around, a few years ago, VC's focus was, did you have AI? Were you doing AI? It didn't matter what you were actually doing. As long as you said you were doing AI, here you go. Great. Now it's like, you're using LLMs, whatever. And I'm just wondering from your perspective, because you started out there, your company, other businesses now are looking at how they might bring LLMs into their product suite or into the tech platform. What do you think the misconceptions are that perhaps people who aren't data scientists, who don't really understand the AI, make about bringing these things into products?
I mean, I think a lot of people go into ChatGPT and prototype something or try something, and the answer looks good once, and they assume that you can build a product out of that.
Yeah.
I feel like that is a really big oversimplification. But what I really observe is that, people that are less technical often see a couple of data points or like a couple of examples and, see the sky as the limit. People that are more technical will often sort of try and find a way that it breaks and then say it can't do anything. But what we see, especially like putting these LLMs in production as well, is that the truth is somewhere in the middle. And if you sort of start seeing LLMs as almost like it's like a soft type of function that you can apply, like where it would be really hard to write exact code to do something, but like a person with a very limited attention span could look at it and say, well, that's right or that's wrong. Like often you can plug them in a controlled way there, and really start leveraging the AI super effectively. But you have to be super thoughtful about how you design your system. And I think that's something that really hasn't changed in the software engineering job at all, where like in the past you had to write your own code for like every single bit, but it was really about decomposing the problem so that it was easy to do each of these parts. I think with AI, sometimes we don't even have to write those routines ourselves anymore, but the decomposition is still super important. With building AI systems, the decomposition is again a super powerful thing. And I think a lot of the trend is now in like building these huge end-to-end systems that just figure everything out by themselves. But often there's no real training data to actually get a model that does that super well. Like you can't really expect what the current level of technology we have, the system that's just trained on like public internet data will suddenly be able to do a task that is only known within your company, for example.
Mm. And do you, I mean, in your organization, do you have any humans in the loop checking anything, sampling any data and looking at what gets presented to your customers?
Yeah, so we basically focus on the sort of entire responsible AI lifecycle. Obviously, since we work with people data and we inform people decisions as well, it's super important to us and to our customers to tackle this right. So we do not upgrade our models on a continuous basis in production. So we do these milestone releases where everything is validated. We do bias audits on our own product, and we also continuously collect statistics just to see if there's anything out of the ordinary there, so that we can zoom in a little closer from our end.
And do you think there's any kind of place? I mean, one of the things that we're doing a lot of work with LLMs right now. We're actually productizing them into our platform. And we're kind of thinking, okay, is there a place for using LLMs to check LLMs, right? Different models sort of doing the sort of supervising. Do you do anything like that, or have you looked at any approach like that?
Yeah, we have this this prototype internally. It's called the Q agent. So basically the quality assurance agent, right. And we use this to perform automated quality checking. It doesn't entirely replace people, but what we notice, and this is quite interesting, is that it's not perfect, but people are also not perfect if you're looking at larger volumes of data. And the thing with LLMs is that their level of quality and attention stays constant through the entire task. So if you're going to benchmark the LLM against you doing it for 1 minute, then you're going to be much better than the LLM. If you benchmark the LLM against you doing it for half an hour, you get a very different picture because your attention just drops so quickly.
Yeah.
So this sort of this AI assisted quality assurance, I do see a lot of potential there.
This podcast, we have a small tradition that every guest presents a book, as you know, and the one you suggested to present today is Shoe Dog, a memoir by the creator of Nike by Philip Knight. So can you tell us more about what you liked in that book?
Yeah, I would say it really represents the spirit of entrepreneurship. And I think you can read the book in different ways. Like one side is sort of, Phil starts with building this business, basically reselling Japanese shoes. And then after running into obstacle after obstacle, has no other option than to just start making shoes himself. And I think it's, on the other hand, it's also a story of this determination to make things happen and to keep going. And often they're in these very sort of tricky situations where they're struggling to pay back the loans that they took, but they're also waiting for the next huge shipment that if it comes in time, they'll have plenty of money to buy the next load and to grow. And so all is it feels like everything is so chaotic all of the time. And the only constant is really this drive to keep making it happen and to take the next step. And I feel our experience of entrepreneurship has a lot of overlap with that, in the sense that you start out in one place. For us, this was the student focused initial product, but then over time you discover something, you run into something, you adjust your approach, and you go for it again. And it's over time your company really evolves from this initial thing, and there's a lot of things that stay the same, but many other things just become radically different. And it's it happens in the blink of an eye because you just keep on pushing forward.
That sounds fun. I've had a few people recommending me that book, so I think I will have to read it at some point. That this story is quite incredible. Sounds like, I don't know if they've already made a movie about it, but if not, they should, probably the McDonald's one, right?
So you recently, I think you just wrote an article for Forbes. I saw that the last week or so it was published, and you were talking about how the sort of LLM space might coalesce around a company who can dominate user interaction. So Meta has WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook, and I'm just wondering, how does this square against the other idea, which I keep hearing, that LLMs are commoditized or will become commodity. So the value is not necessarily in how they are used or how they're built. It's how they are used, not how they are trained or built. I think the comparisons with search engines are kind of wrong, right? Because search engines had a very narrow set of use cases, whereas LLMs essentially can do so many things. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. Do you think we're moving into a place where there's going to be commodification, or do you think we're going to end up with Meta being like Google is today in 5 years, or even OpenAI, sorry?
I mean, I think the situation we're in today is very artificial, as in there's a bunch of different parties pouring billions into, well, basically companies training the same algorithms on largely the same data, which isn't really a sustainable model. So like right now, we just have very similar models, both in the closed source and the open source options that are available. Now, I think what is happening at Meta with the training that they're doing for these models and like the releases that they're making, well, they're making it very hard for anyone else to have like a profitable open source approach, because Meta is basically saying we're willing to outgun everyone for the next couple of years and not make any money off of it. So if they continue doing this so successfully and continue iterating this quickly, I think like a lot of the open source LLM players are going to really struggle to continue what they're doing independently. Like they might ally with the other big tech players, but I think we'll see some consolidation happening there. I think it's the phase after that consolidation that really will be telling for the future of LLMs, because we're already seeing that the smaller models are typically getting released. The bigger ones are kept behind closed doors. And if you look at the technology that we have today, it's not like this is like the peak of artificial intelligence. It's just enough to really show that we're trending towards something truly impressive that that you could actually use as an AI assistant rather than just for like one or two questions and then sort of validating the results. So the question really is, will we still have open models that are really that capable, or are we just like seeing like a highly competitive play to make sure that the person or the company that builds these models is going to be able to dominate fully?
And then a slight change of topic. You had a very interesting post that I saw from about 2 years ago. You were talking about OKRs, and lots of tech companies, we have OKRs, had them at our last company, and I especially liked where you said picking lagging indicators, a goal is only motivating when you see how your actions move the needle. I actually need to go back and check ours now to make sure that's the case. But I think that's so true. So that was 2 years ago, and you made some changes. How do you find the process now? Are you still doing OKRs? I mean, has it changed a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is something that comes in waves. Like for some time, we struggled with our OKRs, and then now they're really back in full swing. I think OKRs are especially powerful when you really use them to drive priorities. But in order to do that, you need to take enough time to set them right and to really build the process around sort of aligning, like, what are we doing this week that is really helping us drive those results? And I feel like the most recent changes that we've made, for example, is that we separated the key results from the key initiatives. Because what we noticed was that within our team, too many of our OKRs were being set on activities. So it's like, we have to write X posts or publish X things, whatever. I think often we mix those up with actual outcomes, and it's not because an outcome is hard to measure that it's impossible to measure. And I think what we found is that by separating the key initiatives from the key results, that we were forcing ourselves more to actually focus on measuring outcomes, and that sometimes we got a better way to measure it. I think it's not because there's no like scientific formula to measure something that you can't ask someone to rate it out of 5 or to ask someone to validate it, etc. And that's been a big step forward for us.
And then my last question. So you did I watched a podcast or listened to a podcast you did, again, I think it was 2022. And you talked about the difficulty of building SaaS solutions for large enterprise. You said, product feedback is harder to generalize because the market's quite small. So how much do you think your product today has deviated from that early vision and the version you have today?
It's definitely a lot more aligned to to actual customer needs today. I think we always say the law of large numbers starts at about 30, and we crossed that threshold in number of customers. So that means that like generalizing from feedback that we get is actually a lot easier today. Although of course, like it's still a very different game than if you have 30,000 consumers on an app, like you just do A/B testing, etc. That's not something that we can do in the environment that we have in the same way. But we definitely have this sort of more data-driven approach to how we prioritize now, and like we collect all product feedback through all channels that we have, and all of the people in our team all in one place, aggregate things, really start prioritizing by impact and sort of the reach of every feature. So I'm really happy with how we've evolved in the past years.
Jeroen, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jeroen.
And then to everybody listening, we will be back in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.